All right, welcome back to Fight Talk, where we talk combat sports. My name is Austin Ullman, and today I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. I realize there's a lot of people that are going to be tuning into this fight that are not typically watching combat sports. We've got a whole new fan base tuning in for this, and this thing is being shown in theaters, in restaurants, all across the nation. And this is a really big deal. And I didn't realize that boxing as a whole had done this good at getting the word out. I've had a lot of people come up to me over the last couple days and ask about this fight. And so I'm making this video as a quick ultimate guide to tell you everything that you need to know about this fight. So just some logistical things to start off. What's going on, right? Why is Jake Paul, the guy that my 13-year-old son is talking about, fighting the guy that I grew up watching, or maybe my dad grew up watching? Why is that taking place? So we'll get into all those things, but just to start with the fight itself, there will be 8 rounds in this fight. Each round will be 2 minutes. Usually in championship fights in boxing, this is 10 to 12 rounds of 3-minute rounds. So we've got 8 2-minute rounds in here. This is a heavyweight bout. They'll be fighting with 14-ounce gloves, whereas usually these guys are going to be fighting with 10-ounce gloves, so bigger gloves. It's a safety precaution thing. We've seen this in some of these exhibition fights where Mike Tyson fought Roy Jones Jr. in 2020. Bigger gloves. You don't have to worry about as devastating of punches landing. This fight is sanctioned, and it wasn't Jake Paul who pushed for that. It was actually Mike Tyson who pushed for this fight to be sanctioned. So what does that mean? That means this fight goes on their records. So Mike Tyson's record of 50-6 could turn to 50-7, or it could go up to 51 wins, and same with Jake Paul. So this will go on their records. There will be official judges. We will have a winner at the end of the night. This isn't your Logan Paul, Floyd Mayweather. This isn't any of those. This is a sanctioned fight where we have judges. We'll have an outcome, and this will be like it's put on by the Texas Sports Commission. So this is the real deal. This is being streamed on Netflix, which is a big deal. We have not seen Netflix live stream a combat sports event. They've been getting into some live streaming, but we haven't seen them get into it yet. And it's taking place at AT&T Stadium. So it's expected that 60,000 people around will be there. This is going to be a $15 million gate, which if you compare it to the UFC, a really, really good UFC event gets a $15 million gate. But boxing-wise, $15 million gate is quite rare. We're entering rare territory when we talk about that kind of money. And the fact that this is a non-pay-per-view event is a huge deal. If you follow combat sports at all, you know that you're usually coughing up anywhere from $60 to $80 for a pay-per-view, whether it's the UFC or boxing. And this is not the case. This is on the standard Netflix streaming account. So even if you have the deal where you pay $7 a month, you get this event, and you have to pay no more. It's not like the UFC where it's on ESPN Plus. You have to pay for ESPN Plus, and then you also have to pay for the pay-per-view. That's not what's going on here. You just have to have any Netflix plan, and you will be able to watch this fight. So there's no reason not to cough up the $7 because, listen, there's going to be tons of people trying to watch this, and you can cancel your Netflix subscription after the fight. There's going to be tons of people trying to watch this illegally, and especially if you're trying to host people for this, that could easily crash, and there could be troubles with a stream. So as of the third quarter of 2024, Netflix had 282 million paid subscribers worldwide. So we're talking about 282 million households, not just people, but households that can watch this fight for free because they're already on the Netflix plan. That's a massive deal. That is a massive deal. And so when it came out, I think my biggest worry was we need every single Netflix subscriber to realize this. And I think they've done a good job of putting commercials on for it and even advertising it on Netflix when you're watching stuff on there. So they've done a nice job with that. Why does this matter? We've never had something like this before. This is a big deal for combat sports, and it could be a complete game changer. This could force the hand of other broadcasting companies like Amazon Prime and ESPN and all these places that are trying to broadcast combat sports. This could really force their hand to get rid of pay-per-views. There's been a lot of talk about, so the UFC has a broadcast deal coming up, and there's been a lot of talk about, can we get the UFC to just get rid of pay-per-views and get a standard, if you have the $15 a month ESPN Plus, then you can watch everything. And so this event happening could really force those companies to do something like this. Otherwise, they'll just be run out, and fans will only start watching these Netflix things. And by the way, I mean, like, there's so many people watching this stuff illegally, and so that's another reason that companies are they're going to have to make that decision at some point. And with the UFC deal coming up, that's at the beginning of next year that will take place, Netflix could be a major player. They've never done combat sports before. This is their first go-around, but potentially they could be trying to make a deal with Dana White and becoming the new broadcast sponsor instead of ESPN of the UFC. So that's kind of the logistics. Where is it? What's going on? What's it look like? Jake Paul, for the betting people out there, is minus 190. Mike Tyson is plus 188. So for my betting fans out there, keep an eye on that. There is some places, some companies are not allowing this to be bet on because they're treating it, because of the different rules, 8 2-minute rounds. They said they didn't want people betting on it. Not completely sure what that's all about, but that's what we're going to see with that. The prelim card starts around 4:30, and then the main event starts around 7. For me, there's 3 fights that I want to see on here. Bruce Carrington is an up-and-coming ESPN star, and he's fighting on the prelims, and then the co-main event between 2 women, I think, is a 10-round fight, Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. I'll touch on that later, but I'm going to tune into that. Most likely all of you guys will be tuning in around 10 o'clock, I would guess, for the main events. They don't have an exact expected ring walk time, but for a main card that starts at 7, I would expect those guys somewhere between 10 and 11 Central Time to be walking into the ring. So I would say 10 would probably be the earliest time you can expect that to happen. And I would imagine even if things went really quick, they would wait and at least wait till 10. Just because a lot of people won't be tuning in until then. So what are people around the sport saying about this fight? There's a couple quotes I found interesting. Eddie Hearn, who is a promoter in boxing and is a promoter of Katie Taylor, who's fighting in the co-main event, said he will not stay for the main event because he doesn't want to support something like that. He's extremely mad that Jake Paul is taking this fight against Mike Tyson, basically saying that it's elder abuse. He didn't actually say that, but if you sum up his words, that's what he's saying. Dana White, another big gun in the combat sports world, absolutely hates it. He went off on it on a podcast a couple months ago. So a lot of people frustrated this fight is going on, obviously besides the people that are making a lot of money from this fight. So what have we seen from these guys? Well, Jake looks good. Jake has been sharp. He won on July 20th. He was supposed to originally fight. This fight was supposed to be on July 20th. And Mike Perry, a guy from the BKFC, stepped in and fought Jake Paul. And he looked really good that night. Battle tested for sure in that fight, but he looked good. And for Tyson, he looks strong. He looks fast. But these are short bits of training footage that we're seeing from Mike Tyson. So it's hard to know exactly what kind of stamina does this guy have. At age 58, it's really impossible to know. So this was originally slated to happen on July 20th, as I mentioned, but Mike Tyson had an ulcer flare-up, and that's how this fight was originally postponed. You might have remembered that in July. Lots of people are arguing that the fight shouldn't have taken place in the first place. Tyson's way too old. He's had way too many injuries. He struggled with back injuries and all kinds of things throughout his career. And so a lot of people saying, if anyone's going to fight at this age, it's not the guy who's battled all these injuries. And that was before the ulcer flare-up. Then he had the ulcer flare-up, and again, people are saying this shouldn't be happening. But here we are. So the situation with that, Tyson was getting on a flight, I think, to Miami, and he became nauseous and dizzy 30 minutes before landing. After landing, or he went to the bathroom on the plane, I think he said, and started throwing out blood. After landing, went to the hospital. It was a 2.5-inch bleeding ulcer. And he was 100% back in training by late July. He mentioned that he lost 26 pounds during the entire process, and he mentioned that he asked the doctor if he was going to die, and she did not say no. So a scary moment, and again, we've seen, it was 2 years ago that we saw Mike Tyson being wheeled around, I think, an airport in a wheelchair, looking really, really old. Looks better now. Again, sharp training footage, but not long bits of training footage. No more than 2 seconds a pop, basically. In this fight, a lot of people will be interested in this. Mike Tyson's getting $20 million straight up. And then that doesn't account for all the sponsorships that he's going to get from this and those kind of things. Jake Paul is getting $40 million. So a lot of people asking, why would Jake Paul take this fight? Well, $40 million is a lot of dollars. And obviously Mike Tyson is, both guys are well off, but hard to turn that kind of money down. The tail of the tape for this fight, Mike Tyson, I said it, he's 58 years old. He has a 50-6 record in professional boxing with 44 knockouts. He's 5'10", 71 inches with his reach. He's an orthodox fighter. On the other side, you've got Jake, who is 27 years old. So 58 to 27, 31 difference in the age gap there. He's 10-1 with his sole loss to Tommy Fury, who is a professional boxer, the brother of Tyson Fury. He's got 7 KOs. He's 6'1", so 3 inches taller, 76 inches, 5 more inches of reach, and also orthodox. So how'd these guys get here? Well, Mike Tyson, obviously, he's 50-6. He's the legend. He was the big knockout guy. His first loss, you might recall, was that big fight against Buster Douglas. Wasn't supposed to be a big fight, but it turned into a legendary fight because Buster Douglas somehow upset him that night. And then Tyson had some other big losses. Obviously, the big disqualification against Evander Holyfield is always talked about. He lost to Holyfield twice. And so his final fight was, it would have been probably about 20 years ago. And we had seen him lose by TKO. And he said, I can't do this anymore. He's like, it's too much for me. I don't want to disrespect the sport in any way. And that was 20 years ago, and now he's back. You might have remembered he fought in an exhibition against Roy Jones Jr., who's another legend. They were about the same age. That was in 2020, but that was an exhibition. That was a poor fight, a lot of body shots. Seemed like there was some kind of deal made that they weren't going to hurt each other. I'll be honest, I remember watching that fight in my house downstairs and literally falling asleep during the middle of the fight. I woke back up to see the end, but it was incredibly boring. This is different, y'all. Like, they are not messing around here. This is not an exhibition. This is a real fight where two guys are going to be going for a knockout. I can promise you that. I don't know what else is going to happen. I can't promise you anything else, but this is a real fight. For Paul, he's been active. We've seen different shifts in his career. His last fight was against Mike Perry, who's just a tough son of a gun and really made Paul work there. So that was on July 20, but he's been very active. Obviously started kind of with the MMA sphere, fought Anderson Silva and Ben Askren and those guys. I guess he started with Nate Robinson and some other guys. And then he said, I want to fight a boxer, fought Tommy Fury, had a close loss there. And then back to MMA, and then said, okay, I'm going to become a world champion. So he fought 2 boxers, 2 amateur boxers, knocked them both out very easily. And then he had the fight against Tyson. He said, I'm going boxing only, fighting up-and-coming boxers. And then obviously he saw what the paycheck could be against Tyson and took that fight. And then obviously fought Perry, who stepped in for Tyson. And now the Tyson fight is happening. So that's how they've gotten here. For those of you who aren't not familiar with Jake Paul, he is a good boxer. He is not, yes, he was on the Disney Channel. Yes, he was a YouTuber. He has worked his butt off, and he is a very, very good boxer. So don't be fooled by anything that you see that says he is not a good boxer. He's very much a good boxer. For Jake, so what could be the issues here? For Jake, it could be stamina. We've seen some stamina problems, and in this fight, he is gaining a lot of weight for this fight. So he's big, but he's never fought someone this big. He's never fought someone this powerful. So he'll have to be a little more careful with the one-punch power that Mike Tyson has. But we've seen him struggle as rounds go on. So the extra weight in this fight, something to watch for him. For Tyson, it's just the injuries. And we just have to see what his speed looks like. We have no idea what it's going to look like. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out there and looks faster than Jake, or about the same as Jake, or if he looks much slower. None of it would surprise me. I have no idea what to expect. But again, he's had the ulcer flare-up, tons of back injuries. And I said it. He was 38 in his last fight, his last real fight, and he said he didn't have it anymore. It's now 20 years later. That's incredible. Both guys have the power to get a knockout. Don't be fooled. It could absolutely happen. Both guys could get a knockout. And so don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It could happen. It could happen. So I mentioned the co-main event earlier, and I want to touch on that. It's Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. Now, why is this a big deal? Katie Taylor is maybe the biggest face in women's boxing right now. She's from Ireland, and she just got the belt. She just won 2 fights in a row against a really tough opponent, and she is incredibly good. She's promoted by Eddie Hearn, and she's now facing Amanda Serrano, which is such a cool story. If you've been following Jake Paul at all, you know that every single fight that he fights, Amanda Serrano's on the co-main event. Jake Paul has fought so hard for women's boxing and fought so hard for Amanda Serrano, and basically given Amanda Serrano his co-main event on every single one of his cards. It's been one of the coolest things to watch. And so he'll certainly be tuned into that because this is by far the biggest fight of her life and the biggest fight we have in women's boxing right now. So that's a big deal. And so if you're interested in that storyline, I would love, it'd be a good idea to research more and find out more about that because it's kind of fun and it's going to be a fun fight to watch. So listen, what are both guys' paths to victory? I think for Jake, if I had to pick knockout odds, I think Jake has a better chance of getting the knockout probably by TKO, just gets Mike hurt and whatever. Again, Mike could get a knockout. I'm expecting Jake Paul to win this fight. That's my pick. I'm expecting Jake to win this fight. But I don't know what that will look like. I think the most probable way to victory for him is he stays at distance and picks him apart and uses his speed. I think that's the one thing is Mike might be more powerful. Jake by far has the speed advantage in this fight. So I think we'll see that. And I think Jake has gotten significantly better at figuring out how to use the body. And I can see him landing some massive body shots early to get into that. But listen, there's no, you don't have to worry about big crowd size or anything like that. Both these guys have been in the moment and are ready for that. So kind of to wrap it up here, what could be next? Hopefully for Mike Tyson, nothing, win or loss. Hopefully we're done with that. I'm okay that this fight is happening. I'm not like a complete hater on that. There's a lot of people that are. Again, it's scary. And if Saturday morning comes around, I'm doing a podcast with a post show and Mike Tyson got badly hurt, I might feel differently about it. But as of now, I'm excited for the fight. And I've never been completely against it. After the ulcer flare-up, I was a little more hesitant with it. But I trust that Mike knows what he's doing. We'll see. So hopefully nothing for Mike, win or loss. For Jake, he says if he wins, he's going to call it Canelo Alvarez, which would be crazy. But it says he wants to be a world champion in boxing. So I expect Jake to go back to the boxing route after this. And frankly, it doesn't get any bigger than this. It felt big with Tommy Fury, and it felt big in all the fights he's had. They felt big. And I can't see it getting bigger than this. It feels like this is as big as it gets for Jake Paul. The only fight that's bigger, he's not going to get it yet, but I think he'll get it within the next couple of years. I dropped a video about this like a month ago. Conor McGregor. I think that fight will happen at some point in a boxing ring, and that could be bigger, but might not. Honestly, I don't know. At that point, maybe Conor's, who knows what will happen to Conor, and if he'll be that big of a draw in a boxing ring against Jake Paul. We'll see. For now, this is massive. This is the biggest event of the year. More people will watch this event than UFC 300 or any other event this year in the UFC or boxing. I promise you that. It's going to be absolutely insane. I cannot wait for it. If it's not Canelo and Jake loses, I think he just goes back to the boxing route regardless. There's not much you can go up from here. So I think he'll go back, and I think he does want to become a world champion. Do I think it's possible? It's not likely, but it could be possible because boxing's interesting. You can pick apart some fights, and there's some not great world champions out there that kind of just snuck their way up there. And like I said, Jake is no joke. Don't let anyone tell you at your Friday night party when you're watching this fight that Jake is a joke. He's not a joke. He is a real boxer with big-time power and big-time skills. But me and Jackson are going to be dropping a preview podcast on the fight itself, but I just wanted to outline what's going on because there's a lot of people asking me and a lot of people wondering what does this fight look like? Is this a real fight? Where is this at? How can I watch this? All kinds of questions. So hopefully I answered all those questions. If you have any more questions, drop them in the comments below, and I'd love to answer them. But for now, I am Austin Ullman, and this is Fight Talk.